And welcome, everybody. Dustin Harris, the host of the Appraiser Coach. Thanks for joining us, folks. You know, I watch the numbers, and I'm not a number cruncher and a number keeper. I know I'm an appraiser, right? But every once in a while I check the downloads and see that we're well over 200,000 downloads at this point. Man, I'll tell you, that does my heart good because I am in this to help appraisers, and I know that you continue to listen and binge listen, if you will, or watch if you're on the Coach Cam. Hi, everybody on the Coach Cam. Yeah, it's me in a green shirt today. I'm just grateful for each of you for joining me, for the feedback that you give, for the ideas that you jump on with. What an awesome thing to be a part of. I love this profession. I love being an appraiser. You know, I spoke to a guy this morning. I know I'm just rambling here, but I spoke to a guy this morning who, was just, from the first 10 seconds I was on the phone with him, I just knew he was a guy I was going to like. He actually called about joining the mastermind team in Dallas. His name was Bob. So hi, Bob. Shout out to you. And in the first 10 seconds, I just knew I was going to like this guy because he was just one of the most positive people that I have listened to in a long time. And one of the things that he said to me was, I love being an appraiser. I've been an appraiser since I was 9 years old. At least he was holding the dumb end of the tape back when he was 9 years old. And he says, I'm 62 now, and I just absolutely love what I do. Folks, I hope that is you. I know I love what I do, and I hope that you love what you do as well. Okay, that being said, we're going to talk about intellectual property today and whether or not your appraisal report is intellectual property. But I first want to remind you that we are sponsored by someone that is very intellectual, and that is Appraisal Software. They understand and they are smart when it comes to appraisers. This company was developed by an appraiser and is still run by an active appraiser. That's right. Check them out, anow.com/coach. That's anow.com/coach. Okay. So the comment came up on a recent board that I was watching about intellectual property and what that has to do, if anything, to do with your appraisal report. So the question was, is your property report intellectual property? Okay. Now, intellectual property is a very key term here. It's a legal term. And by the way, I am not a lawyer. I don't even pretend to be one on the Coach Cam. I am not a lawyer. Okay. Everything that you get off of this is what you pay for, right? How much did this podcast cost you? Yeah, that's right. That's about how much it's worth. Okay. I'm just going to tell you what my experience has been. I'm also going to tell you, some of my fellow appraisers and what they think about this question. But the question again is, what is your appraisal report intellectual property? Now, why is this an important distinction? This comes down to what, if anything, you have to be able to support your values, your opinions, your report when it comes to someone else stealing that information. So let me give you an example. Let me set this up. Several years ago, I trained an appraiser from the bottom up, from scratch. Okay, he had never appraised property in his life. He and I were friends. He came on board. I signed him up as a trainee. We went through the training process. He became a full-fledged certified licensed appraiser in the state of Idaho. And then for various reasons, he left and became my competition. Okay. Every once in a while, I peer review one of his reports. Now, he and I have a mutual, when I say I peer review, I get one to peer review. We have a mutual understanding that I will not peer review his work, okay, because I think there's a conflict of interest, and he feels the same way. So when we do get these reports, we don't actually peer review them, but I look them over. I'm just curious. Here's what I find. Much of that report, now it's changed over the last little while, but especially in the beginning, that was my report. Same boilerplate, same canned comments, same everything. It looked like one of my reports. I remember the first time I got one of these after he left, and I'm like, what, they want me to review myself? And then I started looking, I'm like, I don't remember this address. What the? I started looking further and I realized it was one of his reports that looked exactly like one of my reports, right? And some of that can be expected, right? You train somebody, you teach them, they're not going to be completely different the day. Now, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He actually did change several things in his clone, and I think it was probably, feeling like I don't want to completely copy this guy, right? I've gone out on my own, and whether that was amicable or not doesn't matter to the story. The point is, at least he was a stand-up guy enough to change a few things. But the bottom line is most of his report looked exactly like my report. Fine, whatever. My question is, let's say that had been an unamicable break, and let's say that he's now putting out reports that are basically in my writing, in my tongue, in my text, the way that I had done them. Would I have the ability to be able to go against this individual in a civil lawsuit, for example, and claim that he had stolen my intellectual property? Okay. Again, that term, I'm not a lawyer, want to repeat that, but that term has a very specific connotation when it comes to the law. Intellectual property basically says you own it. You are the curator. You are the author. You are the one who came up with this information. Therefore, you do have a case to say someone else stole that information and used it, and especially if there's a financial situation that caused you to receive some type of setback because that information was used. Okay, so that's the question on the table. Is an appraisal report intellectual property? I'm going to throw one more question into the mix as well before we go to a break, and that is, should you copyright or trademark your appraisal reports? I know appraisers that have done it. Okay. I also know appraisers that are using ANow software, and they are very, very happy with ANow software because one of the things that ANow allows you to do is be able to watch the appraisal process from start to finish. So there are certain things that always have to be done, or at least most of the time have to be done in pretty much every appraisal process. We have to receive the order. We have to set the schedule or schedule the inspection. We have to do the inspection. We have to do the research. We have to pull the comps. We have to put the comps in. We have to make the adjustments. We've got to do the reconciliation. You get it, right? There are steps along the way. ANow software allows you to, at a glance, find out where along that conveyor belt the appraisal that you're working on is at any moment. I love that about ANow software. You set up flags, basically, that as you pass those flags and as you do these things, ANow software is updated so that at any moment you can look and say, oh, that report is in the process of putting in the comps. Great. I know where we're at. The due date is 3 days out. We're good to go. I love that about ANow software because I can keep track of what's going on with every appraisal at every moment in my appraisal business. Check them out right now by going to anow.com/coach. Why the /coach? Because you get a free 3 months of the All-Star team if you will go to anow.com/coach. And we are back, folks. We are talking about intellectual property as it has to do with appraisal reports. Now, I will again give you a caveat. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not even an expert, all right? I'm just a guy that doesn't have a lot of hair, that's wearing a green shirt today, that has something to say about this. So take it for what it's worth. But the question on the table is, when you produce an appraisal report and someone utilizes that appraisal report and it financially damages you, okay? Do you have a case? And I would say yes, you do in some instances. And here's my opinion on the matter. And by the way, I would welcome anyone's feedback on this. Anybody have personal experience with intellectual property when it has to do with appraisal reports? I would love to hear your feedback. Okay, here's where I come down on this. My opinion is this. An appraisal report is full of facts. Okay, facts, not F-A-X, but F-A-C-T-S, facts. An appraisal report is full of facts. Maybe a fact is that this address exists, that this is the legal description, that this is the owner, that the lot size is 80 by 120, that it is zoned R2, that this comparable sold on this date for this amount, that this comparable has 2,600 square feet, that according to the MLS sheet, that this comparable is in C2 condition, okay? That maybe starts to get into a little bit of opinion, but not really. Fannie Mae would say, no. C and Q ratings are not opinion, they are fact, okay? So there's a lot of facts that are in an appraisal report. I would say those kind of things are not, N-O-T, are not intellectual property. Why? Because they are facts that can't be changed and that didn't come up out of your brain and your ability to be able to be creative, right? Those types of things are not, in my opinion, intellectual property. Now, what you do with those things may actually be intellectual property. The opinions and conclusions that you come to by definition of them being opinions I think, fall into the realm of intellectual property. Now, so where does that put us? If someone has utilized that for their own gain, I would say you probably have a case to be able to sue them or come against them in some way, to use the law for your advantage. Okay, so then the question is, well, should you copyright or trademark your appraisal reports? First of all, do you know what it takes to copyright something? It is not an easy process. I have done it. It is not an easy process. Okay. Trademarking is a little bit different. It's much more lax. You can pretty much put your trademark on almost anything. Okay. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand completely how this works. I could be completely wrong with what I'm saying right now. But my experience is that TM trademark is quite easy to do. Anybody can do it and just say, you know what? I trademark that phrase. I trademark this report. I trademark that, that word, whatever. Copyright is much different. You've got to go through a process and get approved and everything else. Are you going to go through and copyright every one of your reports? I certainly hope not. I mean, it sounds like a whole lot of hassle. Trademarking, okay, maybe. I can see a case for that, and I know appraisers that do it, and I certainly am not down on them for doing so. I personally don't, and here's why. The way I understand intellectual property law in most states is this. If something is deemed by the court to be intellectual property, then you have a case whether or not you trademarked it or not. You can say, this was my opinion, this was my creativity, and so stole my opinion and my creativity and created their own thing, and it financially, and I think this is a key here, okay, not just hurt my feelings. That's probably not enough to do a lawsuit, but I was financially hurt because that other individual used my creative process for my disadvantage. That, my friends, is the key. I think, again, I want your feedback on this, but I think I'm pretty good on this one. Speaking of the All-Star Team, I mentioned that earlier when I was talking about A&L Software that you get 3 months free of the All-Star Team. I mentioned here a couple of weeks ago that we now have a new thing when it comes to the All-Star Team. As you know, you get an 8-page color newsletter every single month. Now, yeah, this is brand new, folks. Now you can get it in audio version every single month. So if you're one that doesn't like to read or doesn't have time to read, but you spend a lot of time in the car like I do, audio version is for you. You can now join the All-Star Team and get the audio version. It's the exact same price. You get both the digital and the audio every single month for $9.95 or $95 a year. Please join us, folks. We're creating quite a community online to be able to give feedback and talk about different things. It is a awesome opportunity. I hope you will join us at the All-Star Team. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.